fifth in the Grow Asia Digital Learning Series for 2019. It's an absolute pleasure to have you all here to look at what we think is a very important and very interesting topic. The Grow Asia Digital Directory, which is at growasiadirectory.org, lists about 70 startups right across the region in ASEAN that have a technology which is relevant to smallholder value chains. And those technologies are broad. Some of them deal with finance, others deal with helping farmers get access to weather and information about how to plant their crop. And it's our job as a not-for-profit agency funded by the Australian Aid Program to think, what is going to make the difference? What's going to take those 70 solutions that today we estimate reach 2.5% of farmers, 2.5% of family farms in ASEAN use a digital solution to inform their farming practice today. What's it going to take to get from where they are today to reaching a scale of impact and transforming the sector, digitizing the sector, making it a whole lot more efficient and a whole lot more productive? And having met with lots and lots of founders and lots of corporates and VCs, we think there's two things that are particularly important to the sector today. The first is human-centered design, and that's because tech works, tech grows to scale when it understands its customer and solves a problem for that customer. We're still, as a sector, a little bit stuck in developing technology because technology looks cool, or it's interesting, or it looks like it should be applied in agriculture. We think that going back to the farmer, interviewing the farmer and understanding their needs is one of the most important principles of the growth of the sector more broadly. The second is corporate startup partnerships. And that's because we think that the best place to incubate new ideas and test them is inside a startup environment, and the best place to take them to scale is inside a corporate partnership. So we think that we do need a very broad range of founders working with farmers, using that HCD process, developing and iterating new technologies. And some of them will fail, in fact many of them will fail. But the ones that are succeeding, the ones that are getting traction in the market, need corporate partnerships in order to grow. That does not mean that it's very easy for a corporate and a startup to work together. And how many people in the room have had some experience of a partnership between a technology innovator and a corporate, on either side of the equation? You've had some exposure to that relationship. Well, today's session is all about that relationship, and it's about how to make that a productive relationship for both groups. We can see the potential of the relationship, the fact that the startup brings the idea, the new technology, the ability to work in a very quick and agile way for it to develop that idea, and we can see the scale of the corporate and the ability to take that technology to scale. But that doesn't mean that it's easy. So we we surveyed you on the way in, and I hope you had a chance to highlight from a corporate perspective, because many of you are from the corporate sector, what do you see as the key issues that make these relationships quite as challenging as they are? And the results are over there. But before the session, about 2 weeks ago, we surveyed 25 startups from the region and asked them. And we think it's a really nice process to say, okay, from a corporate perspective, what are some of the challenges? Talk to the startups, understand the challenges from their point of view, and then we can start to get to really unlocking solutions to some of these challenges. Of the 25, 75% of respondents had, at some point in the development of their startup, had a relationship with the corporate. And what do they say? First, we asked, why do you enter into a relationship with a corporate? What are you trying to achieve from entering into a partnership? Number one, big answer at 72%, access to sales and distribution. And I was talking to somebody from a crop protection company the other day, and he was saying, it's our brand, it's the number of farmers that we reach that we can really bring to a startup partnership. Startups are looking for joint technology and product development, and looking for access to funding. So we've got a really good picture of some of the reasons that startups are looking for corporate partners. But what do they see as the challenges? Well, it's quite difficult to negotiate commercial terms for the partnership. There's usually an exchange of money at some point in the partnership, and there's a lot of risk around these relationships. It's a bit unclear where it's all going to go. So it's not typically a vendor relationship. Here's a service, here's the product, you buy it, go out and get 3 quotes. They're very tricky partnerships to negotiate commercial terms around. The next thing, which is a huge headache for lots of startups, and certainly those that I've spoken to, is just the amount of time that these things take. Startups are burning through their capital every month. They're trying to get moved really quickly, and they do find the process slow. And it'll be interesting in our breakout session later to unpack that one, because it's a super tough one. And then we bring in the idea of the notion of policies. Corporates are typically more risk adverse. They have a lot of policies given the size of their organisation. And it's not about criticising policies. Policies are very important when we're running big organisations, but they do represent a real challenge for startups during that negotiation process. So there's the top 3. You can see the others there. But I think having captured today what some of the challenges that the corporate sector see and the startups see, I think we can start to have a productive conversation around this issue. If you want to see the results from our survey of corporates, the survey of the startups, you need to get yourself onto growasiaseries.com. As you can see along the top there, all of the different topics that we've dealt with this year. This is obviously the 5th event, so there's 4 previous tabs there. You can look at the videos from past events. You can look at all the results from the breakout sessions. It's, I think, building up into a really interesting library of learning for digital agriculture in the region. Again, thank you for coming today. I think we've got a really great balance here of Barbara from Unilever, who's going to be talking about Unilever's experience with corporate startup partnerships. And Unilever has a long journey and has tried a whole lot of different approaches to startup partnerships, and we've got a lot to learn. And then we're going to have a panel with 2 corporate leaders and 2 startup founders who are going to share some of their insights in terms of corporate startup partnerships. I'll pass over to Derek to introduce Barbara. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Paul. My name is Derek. I'm CEO of Partner & Co. I'm one of the facilitators and executors of this Grow Asia learning series. Thank you very much for spending your Monday afternoon with us. Because we know that Mondays for corporates is usually a really crazy time where people are just rushing for work in progress meetings and so on and so forth. So thank you very much for being here. We hope that later on we can have a really nice conversation between the corporates and the startups and discussing some of the issues that Paul has just started to raise. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the next speaker. We've been working with Barbara for the last 5 years. To this day, we still consider Unilever's approach to engaging with startups, to working with startups as a gold standard. Not just in the area of tech, because Unilever has a very, very large component of competing in the food business, but also in all other aspects of the business. So let me pass the mic to Barbara to take you through how they actually do it and what some lessons they've learned along the way. Barbara.
I only have 15 minutes, so I'm not sure how much detail I will go there, but I will definitely try to give you an overview of what we are doing, what are the key principles. So I'm Barbara. I've been 18 years in Singapore, and I'm an entrepreneur. I used to start this presentation by saying I was an entrepreneur, but actually the more I'm working in a foundry and the more I'm working with my team as well, the more I realize that we are entrepreneurs, doing it a different way. I failed a couple of startups, one very big. But today I have a cool job, I guess, because it's working at the intersection of our brands, understanding the strategy, and understanding technology and how we can get the two to work together. So before I get into the details, I'm going to go through two principles on which Foundry is based. Consumer goods industry will change the next 10 years, if it's not 5, way more than it has changed over the past 40 years. But what's really interesting is you can replace consumer industry by any other industry and it will be the same. Banking, logistics, supply chain, agriculture as well. I think everyone will go through that disruption through digitalization. And the second principle is technology. It only took us, and really think about it, because it's not long, it only took us 20 years to put an entire electronic store into the back of our pocket. Only 20 years. And that's going to accelerate. It has already started to accelerate. And you just, I'm not going to say worse and worse, but it will accelerate definitely. You need to acknowledge that. You need that technology is changing our world as a consumer, as an enterprise, as corporates. And because we are here to talk about startup and partnership between corporates and startups, this is also, and I give you an idea about the number of startups we need to deal with. That's only for marketing and ad tech. So even when you are corporate, we talk a lot about the difficulties that startups have to work with corporates. But what about the difficulties that corporates have to find the right startups, to find the right technology? And in this case, this is also why we're working with companies like Along & Co. to help us to see through the cloud of all those startups. And again, this is only marketing ad tech. In every single industry, you'll get the same amount of startups coming. That's my favorite picture. And we are going into the real deal of corporate innovation. If I show you this picture and I ask you, who do you think out of these two people is going to win? What do you say? Let's say you still awake. The big guy. You should say the big guy. Now, if I'm saying that's not a battle, that's a race, who do you think is going to win? The perspective is very, very different. And also, some large corporations today invest or acquire into startups. Today, the growing approach is to partner. But partnering, when you have such big differences between two corporations, is difficult. The large corporations have the reach, the resources, access to market that startup aspire for. The startup, they have the agility, the novel ideas, access to technology that we value. It sounds like it should be a win-win partnership, but it is really difficult to make it a win-win partnership because it's complex, because those two organizations are totally different. And I've been working in both. So far, I've been longer in the other side, the startup side, but they are two different organizations. They are evolving at different speed. The priorities are different. Money doesn't have the same signification for the big one or the small one. So you need to create something for the two to communicate and to work properly. And that's what we call, I used to call it a platform, but I think the interface is the right word. You need to create the right interface for your organization to communicate with the startups, and for the startups to communicate with the organization. It's a two-way bridge. And I will not go into the details, but you have, we can summarize, and at least that's what I've seen from my perspective here. There is two types of engagement that you have. You can create two types of interface. You can have what we call the cohort interface, which is the Accelerator Model. You create a program. You do have some competition at the beginning of the program, but once you're in as a startup, you go through the program all together, and most of the time startups do talk to each other and participate. There is not so much of competition in there. This is one model, but I'm not going into the details of the cohort model, because the model that we have picked on, I'm not saying we've done it on purpose at the very beginning, or 4 years old, 5 years old program is the funnel model. The funnel model, you have access or you are looking for a lot more startup at the beginning, and you start from a business statement. You start to identify the problem you want to solve, and you go out there and look for the startup. And then you narrow it down to the one you want to pilot with. And that's what Unilever Foundry is about. Of course, today it looks like, we had that idea, and then this is how we built it, and now it's working. It is working. We've been 5 years around, so I guess that we are delivering some value to Unilever. But it has been a journey for us. We have learned a lot on the way. Started back in 2014, mainly looking at marketing and ad tech startups only. Today I will explain that we're doing a lot more. What is Unilever Foundry? That's this interface. It's a platform for collaboration, a framework for experimentation. Most of you are from corporates, and you do have KPIs, like we all do, to deliver by the end of the year. And when I'm coming to you with the opportunity to work with a startup, you are thinking, is this going to help me to deliver? What is the amount of risk that I'm taking? Because you have to remember that working with the startup, it is risky. They are themselves looking for sustainability of their business model, financial sustainability. We are here to experiment. We are not here to replace procurement. If you know what you want, you go to procurement, they will find you the latest VR solution or the latest technology you need to engage with the consumer. But if you come to the Unilever Foundry, you don't know what the solution is going to be. You have a problem. How can I engage with consumer in rural areas where there is no data and no smartphone? Less and less true, but that was 3 years ago. How do I improve traceability on my Knorr soup product in Vietnam? And how do I engage my consumer and tell my consumer about it? That's a problem, not the solution. And this is how today the organization is coming to the Foundry with problems that they now are convinced that technology can help. And that's our point of view. We are here to make sure we don't reinvent the wheel internally. We are here to acknowledge that technology out there moves way faster than we are, and we need to leverage it. And that's why we need to partner with startups. But we need to provide that like I said, safe environment for our organization to work with startups. So, simply put, we have, I would say, 3 big areas, we have 3 pillars, 3 focus areas. The first one is to discover new technology. We don't know what we don't know. And as a big organization, we don't all have the time to look for the latest news and the latest tech. And then when you look at the startup landscape, it's very difficult to keep track. So our objective is to really be aware of what's going on outside. It's a door to outside. The second thing is pilot, partner, and scale. Having that interface is important. What success looks like for Unilever is not what success looks like for startups. And that's very important to remember. When with the team we work on the pilot, the first thing we need to do, so I'm just skipping through, we have identified a startup and we need to engage with them. Just try to write the scope of work. It's difficult. We don't have the same understanding of scale, we don't have the same understanding of success, and we don't have the same understanding of what experimentation here is. So the team, the Foundry team is here to manage expectation from both sides. Yes, we are a big organization. Yes, we are slow as well. The startups need to understand that. They need to understand the process in decision making, where the budget is coming from, and what is important to us. And startups need to understand how big organizations are working, and especially the CPG organization. The good thing is, once you know how Unilever works, then you are likely to know how every other CPG company are working. And the third one is culture change. On this one, I'm a bit, I put it here now, and I believe that Foundry is part of the culture change. What we have done, we have managed to change the thinking of people, where they used to go to their traditional agencies or tech supplier, etc., instead of looking what's happening outside. Is it the consequences of the Foundry today? We participate to change, or is it now something that we are actually doing? If you are asking me, because usually it's a question I have during Q&A, what are the Foundry KPIs? As is, it's not going to change. But when I started the Foundry, I was on my own for 2 years before I had the opportunity to build a team. KPIs was the number of pilots. How many people I managed to convince in the organization to come to the Foundry, talk about their problem, and go and look for a solution. And that was difficult. And you know why? Because I don't have budget. Because I cannot pay for the pilot, and I cannot pay for the scouting fees if there is a need. So the organization or the brief owner, like we say, needs to have the budget and for me to go and look for the startup and to pay for the pilot, because we do pay every single pilot we do. So when we talk about budget, about KPIs, then I need to convince the business that whatever money they will use from their own budget to come and work with Foundry, it will deliver results. And at the beginning, I had a lot of struggle to go and talk to people. I had to really go to them and ask them what problem we need to solve. And half of them says no. But slowly we built our case studies, we got good results for first pilots, etc. Today, my KPIs are not pilots, because today I have a team of 5 people, and actually the brands or the functions are coming to us with product development. We are the ones to say, no, that's a procurement brief. It's not for us. Go to procurement. So today the KPIs is the number of scale-up. How many startups do we manage to scale across the organization, which means impact. A pilot itself is not going to deliver impact per se. Not for a company like Unilever. As soon as it scales, more than 10 markets or more than 10 brands, we can start to measure those impacts, and then we can start to speak about success. This is the area we are talking about. New technologies. I could have put a lot more. It's just a screenshot of what we are looking at. We are also looking at new business models. We haven't really cracked it yet. We have tried a couple of things in Indonesia. We have tried a couple of things in France, for instance, where we were using people washing machine to wash your neighbor laundry. It's still going on at the moment, but this is a question that we are looking at. This is a very wordy slide, but I think it's important because it reflects the team that we are. I said we are 5 or 6 people with myself. And basically, we are a different team. We understand our business, we understand our brands, we understand our global goals and our regional needs and the market needs, but we need to have a different mindset. And we need to embrace the startup mindset if we want to make our pilots effective. Pilots, roughly, it's about 3 months between the brief to identifying the startup and starting the pilot. So that's something that we have embraced. And we have communicated a lot across the organization in Southeast Asia. So when we started to work on Foundry, I was spending a lot of time on this to explain what's the pilot, what's the small scale. And today I'm admitting that we are skipping through that slide because people know now. Because we have enough success stories, enough examples for people to understand how we work. And that's why I think the culture change has happened. We moved from marketing tech, so when we started in 2014, we looked only at marketing and ad tech. We are a marketing company. We are still linked to our CMO, and we were looking at things around content creation, programmatic buying. Today would be influencer marketing. But we moved for the last 2 years, we moved into other areas around the logistics space. We've done a partnership with the lorry. We've done a pilot in June, declared successful in August, and we started the partnership in January. 3 years partnership. Bukalapak in Indonesia, it's a B2B marketplaces. We are exploring new channels for our consumer to find our products. Helping is in Europe. It works in Europe, in Germany. Have you heard about Helping? So you can get services to clean your house and you use our product. It works in Germany, we tried here in Denmark. So to date, I I say spend, not invest. We don't invest into startups. We have Unilever Venture who do the investments, but we are unbiased in a way that if the pilot doesn't work, we can pull the plug. So 200 million spent in pilot from our brands and functions, 200 pilots globally, and 45 scale-ups. So out of those 200 pilots, 45 of them became a regular partner of Unilever. Sometimes big scale, sometimes small scale, but still a scale-up. So this is my key takeaway, I would say, for you to bring back home. You need to acknowledge the fact that technology is there and is growing very fast. And your industry, no matter which industry you are, will be disrupted. You need to have clarity. Why do you want to work with a startup? And when I talk to other corporates, they don't have that clarity. They don't really know. They know it's cool, the demo day is cool, it's super nice, and we need cool people, and we have a lean like a startup experience. But what do you do with that? What's the objective? Is it cultural change? That's fine, but you need to set it. You need to put it on paper. And you need to have your senior stakeholder agreed on that. And the last one is the interface. It's not because you have the best intention to work with startups that it's going to work. You need to have this special team who will understand your business inside out, will understand technology almost inside out, without being expert, understand how you can connect the dots and make that magic happen between the startup and the corporate. And you need to accept that there will be failure. And you need to have that specific team through that interface who will be able to work with the startups. If a pilot fails, what I said to my team is, the one thing is, we'll say it's because of founder. We need to have that. You need to have that team who is taking care of that. Although all the ownership and the decision when you do the pilot belongs to the brave owner. If it's success, it's their success. If it's a fail, it's our fail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you. I think the best repeating that it is a journey, it's a process.
It is.
It's taken 5 years to get to this point. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to move on to the panel discussion. One of our panelists is still making her way here. Lynette has just flown in from the Philippines and she's having some meetings downtown. And she's still making her way here, but don't worry, I will introduce her regardless. So can I invite the rest of the panelists, Kim Huat from Yara, Spencer from Farm Force, and Tanmay from Untitled Chapter. Yeah, we should have a yeah. Right. And I think that is just minutes away, but let's get started with this conversation. Perhaps maybe I'll just wait for her. Who knows, we might show up in a couple of minutes. So let's start with brief introductions. What you do, who you are, and what your organizational objectives are. Maybe starting from Kim.
Hi, good afternoon. Well, thanks for inviting me to come and attend this as a panelist. I work for Yara. Yara is a Norwegian company. We are the pioneer of mineral fertilizer producer in the world. Started in 1905 through harnessing the hydro technology power to produce extract nitrogen from the air. So in a way, we also started responding on the technology. So since then, we have produced different kind of fertilizers to feed the world. I've been working with the company for more than 20 years, so I've never worked in a startup. I'm very much like to view and see what's on the inside the startup, and very keen to learn from them. But I'm happy to be here today to share my experience. I have been in different roles in Yara. I worked in China, in Brussels, and my current role is actually director for business excellence. So So we take care of the economy, marketing, and the commercial excellence part of the business for Asia. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Spencer. I work in the operations team at FarmForce. Thanks for the opportunity to come in and talk today. So FarmForce is a web and mobile platform that people use to manage the first mile of agricultural supply chains. So usually this is kind of within the context of a contract farming relationship. So our typical customers, we provide a B2B web and mobile platform, and our typical customers are companies running contract farming schemes, sourcing from smallholder farmers, typically sourcing kind of high value crops from large numbers of smallholder farmers. So kind of typical customer for us is like, say, a black pepper exporter in Vietnam managing 1,000 smallholder farmers growing rainforest Hawaiian certified black pepper and exporting it to a large spice company. And so they would use our platform to manage kind of all the record keeping with the farmers, yield forecasting, traceability, certification management, kind of all these topics in the first mile. So we work with black pepper exporters in Vietnam, cocoa companies in West Africa that need bag level traceability and kind of real-time management of the certified quota, vegetable exporters in Central America, rice millers in Thailand. So we've been rolling the system out for 6 or 7 years now. I think we're up to customers in around 40 countries or so. The number changes pretty frequently. And we have a wide variety of experience with multinationals. We have a number of multinationals who are currently our customers. So the ones that immediately spring to mind are Cargill, McCormick, Kellogg's, Diageo, and a few more. And so I'm kind of happy to share our experience with kind of working with them and some other multinationals. If it can kind of help people and shed some light on the subject. So thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Tanmay, and I am the head of Asia Pacific for Untitled Labs. So Untitled Labs is an Indian AI deep tech startup, and we work in the space of food quality and grading. Specifically, we work on post-harvest commodities, mainly on fruits and vegetables, fresh before they are processed. And we work with food companies, including large food retailers. We also work with food manufacturing companies. And the problem that we try to address with these companies is that when it comes to dealing with quality of fresh produce, even the large corporates, they don't have a hang on like what's going on, what kind of produce is being procured at the procurement gate, what kind of quality is being processed through the supply chain, what is being delivered to the customers or displayed to the customers. Food manufacturing companies don't exactly know like what kind of produce is coming to their production lines. I mean, they talk in very old school way, but given the fact that there has been advances in AI in the rest of the fields, it's really unfortunate to see like what kind of process there are in these food companies. We have, as I said, we have worked with very large companies of the world, leading retail brands, and we have leveraged a lot of corporate programs and partnerships. We have participated in accelerator programs. We have done a lot of pitching. We have also explored the corporate VC funding. So yeah, it will be good to talk about all those engagement models and the challenges we have faced so far.
Thank you, Chen. I'm Mike Minette, President of Subventures.
I apologize.
Minette, we're just introducing a quick round introductions.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry again for arriving late. My name is Minette Navarrete. I run Kickstart Ventures. It's a corporate venture capital fund out of the Philippines. We have 2 funds going on our third. Our first 2 funds are from Globe Telecom, which is our 100% owner. We have made 42 investments in companies in 7 countries. So a lot of that strategically aligned to building digital lifestyles and digital businesses. We are in the process of organizing our third fund, which was announced earlier in the year. The third fund will represent investments for the Ayala Corporation. The Ayala Corporation is a 185-year-old company. It's the oldest business house in the Philippines. It's a conglomerate with everything from banking, telecoms, water, property, automotive, microelectronic circuits, so a wide range of industries that we participate in. And the hope is that this new $200 million fund is also going to support a number of startups across, I guess, the globe, as well as drive innovation inside the companies.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Actually, since you have the mic, pass on the mic. Okay, sorry. Actually, oh, okay, let me pass the mic back. So, Minette, maybe we start with you. Let's just talk about the approaches of working with startups, because actually you do wear a few hats. And one of them is as a new business at Globe itself, and you do create these partnerships. Let's start with the why. What sort of value do working with startups actually bring? Why do corporations partner with startups?
That's a good question. So for Kickstart, we say our why, our purpose, is to break barriers and to build bridges between startups and corporations, and to try and create a disproportionate leverage that allows people to succeed where they normally would not. If anyone, and I know I'm coming in late, who's from corporate world here? Who's from startup? Who has attempted to work between corporate and startup? Was it easy? So frequently, that's our understanding, that it never is easy. The timelines, people are at different clock speeds, expectations are very, very different. And so what we hope to bring is an understanding. So I had come from a startup before. I joined Globe Telecom, and the expectation is that we would bring an understanding of how startups function and kind of act as a translator that allows them to interface with each other, put our own judgment on the line so that we can say, as an example, we will have to waive certain requirements for procurement, which is usually one of the first pain points a startup encounters. I see some smiles in the audience. When you try to get through a procurement process, and the startup doesn't have 10 years worth of financials to back up their credibility, and you're the business unit and you're trying to get it through, but your procurement guys are saying not possible. So that's one of it's because we have an understanding of how both work. The hope is we can help navigate the minefield that is startups and corporates working with each other.
Thank you, Minette. Actually, that's the number one issue that this crowd has flagged out. And on your way in, we've asked you guys to vote in terms of the major challenges, and that actually, the eligibility, the credibility part is actually the number one. We'll come back to that later. How about Kim Watson? What's your experience in terms of different ways of working with startups?
Our main experience in this part of the world is we co-sponsor with Croatia for this Digital ASEAN program, and we mentor 4 of the startups. Well, we feel that it was a very interesting experience for us because of the way they work, the agility they bring to the project, the speed, the no fear factor. They are risking to fail fast, which is very different from our corporate culture. We are more likely to spend months of evaluating a projects before we proceed, and there's several gateways to engage to decision-making case as well. So, and for us to be able to watch how this startup actually grow and attempt to launch their products and pilot it in the market, I think it gives us a very different perspective of how Yara has changed, because 2 years ago Yara has decided to incorporate digital as part of our strategy, and we actually set up a business unit dedicated to develop digital solutions for the agriculture, particularly in our core business which related to crop nutrition. And we have recruited a lot of young entrepreneur minds people with user experience, user interface experience, very different from our colleagues of mine who have been working with the company for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. By the way, the record is 50 years. And so it's a very different setup, mindset, and to be able to have these two groups of colleagues working together is a big gap. But by watching all these startups, we actually can appreciate some of the values that they bring, the speed, the ability to think fast and think out of the box, because they are not from the industry. So if you are working in the industry like myself for 20 years, we tend to think the usual solution, go through the usual pathway to solve a problem. And that's not the same for the startup. Some of the questions they ask are really, really interesting, and really wake up and say, why did we never thought of this? So these are the ideas that actually add value to us, and it's also a wake-up call for us that if we don't change the way we think, we work, disrupt ourselves, someday, somehow, very soon, someone else will disrupt our business.
Thank you. Let's go over to the other side of the room. Maybe start with Spencer. You have a very successful business, actually. You guys have scaled a lot, especially the last 6 years. And you have a very commercially viable business, and in other cases as well. How did you sort of get here in terms of partnering with some of the larger organizations? What was your experience like in them helping you to establish as well as scaling your business?
Okay, so I think when it comes to partnering with corporates, I think startups should ask whether it is the market they want to go after, right? So always this is something that seems like a good idea. As a startup, generally the initial problem is that you are at an unprofitable scale, right? And so the question is, as a startup, how do I grow my sales normally up to a scale where it's profitable, right? And multinationals represent a very large market, right? And as a startup, you need to scale your sales in an energy efficient, in an effort efficient way, right? Because you have very, very limited, resources, right? So the idea of selling to multinationals is very attractive, right? I make one sale, and maybe it's bigger than selling to 100 other companies, right? So this always will be attractive, but as a market, our experience is that multinationals have very, very different requirements, right? So we are a B2B SaaS platform, right? So in terms of market and scale are very important for us. Selling to the smaller companies, so some kind of SME, kind of maybe managed by the owner, you can have a good meeting with him. He says, I like what you're doing, you start next week, right? Okay, corporate, definitely not, right? All of the requirements around security. So again, this is getting into some things that are a bit specific to our technology. Multinationals have a number of hygiene factors in the procurement, like meeting their security requirements, right? So we specifically target this market. So our hosting is on Amazon Web Services. It's very high quality. They have all of the certificates for different security qualifications and certifications. But it's more expensive, right? And so we specifically target this market, and so a lot of our infrastructure is set up to comply with it. Also in terms of business model, so some of our competitors have more like a Facebook model, where they maybe provide the platform cheaper, but sell the data to other people. So at least with the multinationals we work with, this is completely off the table. Huh? There's no chance they will agree to something like this. And so it's okay, but we need to price our services accordingly. It needs to include those costs, and it needs to include all of the costs in the fees, right? It can't be getting money from some other revenue model. And so I think that one thing that's important for startups is to consider the implications on their business model of working with corporates.
Thanks. Before we go to the timing, just quick responses from and then again what? Because Spencer just talked about making that one sale to you. What are the basic criteria? What are the things that how do startups best sell to people?
For us, we look for scalability as one of the key value or key criteria. If you look at a solution, we like the solutions, then we have to think how does this help in our core business and whether we can scale up easily. Because for us, the thinking is as MNC, typically we think global, we think regional. We have to think outside more than a country because we need to be able to find solutions that can be scaled in different countries at the same time, and at some time can be self restriction. Because what works in Philippines might not work in Indonesia, or what works in Indonesia might not work in Myanmar because they are different. So if we take that approach there, and it makes it more difficult for us to think, and that's why we probe a bit more and try to get the value of it. But the thing is that if we don't try a pilot, and we'll never know. So we need to see the result of the pilots and then see how the pilot work in our distribution system through our market access and see if we work with our distributors, with our farmers. If it works, then we feel much safer in this fail-safe mentality. Fail-fast mentality does not exist in a company. So we have to overcome that. It's very important first step. So for startup to really come to us, then I think it's good to have that approach that we can actually test the product in our market so that we can see the result and learn how we can improve. It's one more.
I think maybe to start, we ask, is this the right solution? Is this the right startup? And is this the right time? Because sometimes the partnership would be in theory very, very good, but if you're a startup with, let's say, 12 people and you're working with a large company that is used to having 5 people servicing the account, then automatically that takes nearly half your company, nearly half your headcount off the table, right? So this is not quite the right way. The thing we have learned is that frequently a good time is when the startup has at least developed some automation and therefore the ability to scale and scale fast and handle the tens of millions of customers, for example, that a telco can bring to a startup, or the thousands of large corporations that a telco can introduce as enterprise customers. So we look for certain things around whether the company has the ability, has the absorptive capacity to deal with large corporation before we make the introduction, before they start to work with each other. One of the things we have found that works really well is to identify point persons on either side, and the point persons understand that the nature of the other side is quite different from themselves. So startups need to learn that corporations have diligence that is necessary, and while we can waive certain requirements, there's some requirements that are not going to be waived. Security is clearly one of them. Adherence to data privacy laws, basic stuff. But whether or not the company is undercapitalized, sometimes you can waive that. If we have made an investment in a company, then we'll say we're good for it. So certain timetables and certain necessary steps will need to be in place.
Thank you. And Amay, we first of all encountered you guys, I think, with the Rubble Bank and Rubble Foundations Focus Challenge last year.
Yes.
And I think you mentioned that you have worked through these accelerator programs and such pitching opportunities. How have you been working with multinationals and corporate partners in this region?
Yeah, so we have been working with large corporations since, even before the time we had a concrete technology. To your point that you look for scalability and then that decent level of progress before you would want to work with a startup. But we have been working with companies even before we had even an iota of a product. So there was a time we were not looking at agri space at all. We were doing exploring some other industries, and then we decided to pivot to agri and food. And we had this core basic technology. I mean, it's classic image processing that you take images and then make sense of it, analyze images and then figure out what's in that image, what kind of food item, any kind of defect, infestation, so on and so forth. So one of our earliest clients in the food industry was this company called Reliance Fresh. It's one of India's largest food retailers. And when we participated in the Accelerator program, we had just this technology and then the basic idea that we can apply this technology to the concept of food quality. So we got selected and we got a pilot, and they allowed us to work in one of their stores and one procurement center. So and then they were kind enough also to have us access to data, images, and their internal expertise, access to their processes, knowledge of the entire processes. I mean, it's a big company. So we had the good fortune of developing the entire product and actually understanding the use case and developing the use case with this company. So that was very, very useful. And over time, we have worked with them. We have expanded across stores, across commodities, and across use cases. And then now, as we pick up progress, we work with different clients and understand everybody's use case and pain points. So now we are reaching that stage of prioritizing the offering that we have.
Quick follow-up question on that. That corporate that helped you, even though you didn't even have the products, right, to get into the space, what sort of attributes did that corporate have? Was it a structure? Was it a mindset? What sort of objectives did they have going into this?
See, I mean, first of all, they had an understanding of the problems that the supply chain had. Frankly, a lot of companies don't even acknowledge or comprehend the fact that there is something wrong with their supply chains. So they understood the problem, especially in a country like India, since quality and supply chains are not properly digitized. This quality and upkeep of quality becomes a big problem. So they understood the problem, and then they also had this understanding that consumer perception is somewhat affected if the quality is affected. So that was putting a tab on their top line as well. As far as what they found in us, I think it was more the technology side and the team side. As I understand, they really liked our team and the technology. At least at that time, there were not many startups doing what we were doing 3 years ago.
Thank you. So we just raised this interesting point about they like the team, right? And you know, sometimes we just remember it's actually that partnership is also a personal relationship, right? Like I'm very, very fortunate to have a good relationship with Barbara. Oh, okay. And I think that's really, really important in terms of you know, getting some experiments going, because you know, failure is always something that's very possible. So therefore you need the sort of nice interpersonal relationships to help to cover that. Maybe Spencer, in your experience in working with multinationals as well, did you come across a number of these sort of, did you have a number of such relationships that you really benefited from?
Yeah, you know, I think especially the people who worked with us in the early days, they were people who took a risk, you know, and were willing to take a risk. But at the same time, we kind of acknowledged that and organized our affairs correspondingly, right? So the way that we do the business development process is showing people working software. We understand what people need to do, set up a demo, and then show them, here's the working software, you can use it as soon as you want to. we were very careful never to sell something that's not there and then try to build it in a hurry. This is a thing that startups do that's very risky, right? And so when we were working, so I think across the board we don't do that, but especially in these circumstances. And also recognizing that the people who were working with us at that point, and still today, take a significant personal risk in their careers. You know, they source some very expensive software from SAP or something. They don't have to take any risk, right? They can say, it was SAP, great reputation, right? They source from us, thank you. And so as a consequence, on those projects, we are very risk averse and make very, very sure that what we are going to deliver for those people, we deliver. You know, and I think that's when you're the startup, I think that's extremely important to work kind of in that way, you know, and to recognize the risk that the people you're working with are taking.
Thank you. On that note, I'd like to invite brave people out there in the audience. Any responses, any questions for the panel?
Go first. Mine specifically for Spencer, and it's a little bit loaded because I'm from Cargill Cocoa and Chocolate.
Hey.
I would love it if you could speak a little bit about those security risks and what you have to get through. And I feel your pain because I have to do it with you guys. And talk about how that impacts your scalability within a corporate, with a corporate customer, that experience that a lot of you guys are going through right now.
Okay, so on the security requirements, we recognize that it's a non-negotiable requirement for our multinational customers, you know, and frankly, it kind of should be for everyone, right? But specifically, for multinationals, maybe there's, again, a bigger reputational risk, right? And again, we recognize the risk people are taking, and therefore it's incumbent upon us to mitigate it, right? And I think this comes into a lot of organizational structure issues. Our hosting is through Amazon Web Services. We could find cheaper people to do the hosting and give our customers lower prices, but AWS is extremely secure, so we use it, right? In terms of our technology team, specifically some of the senior people in our technology team have a large amount of experience with security, and so we recognize that this is necessary, even if we could employ cheaper people, that this is not something which is going to work. And so I think it's a lot about market, right? If you're going after the broad scale SME market, maybe these are not the choices you're going to make. If you're going to work with people who are as professional as Cargill, this is the way that it kind of has to be. Does that answer your question sufficiently? Is it?
Yeah, I was getting at too when we look at like a global solution, for example, for first mile traceability, and how you find some of these issues, and others may have experience with this as well, where it's all startups in the space, and getting anybody to a level where they can globally scale with us. You know, how do you look at those challenges? A lot of it relates to security, a lot of it relates to organizational structures. You know, what kind of things do you guys do in forward planning so that with one customer, for example, you could scale to a global level?
Yeah, and so this is, so maybe a little bit of context. We have a great project with Cargill Cocoa and Chocolate doing first mile traceability, bag level traceability back to the farmer in West Africa. I think one of the first of its kind, and really trying to fix some of the most pervasive problems in cocoa sourcing. And so we greatly appreciate Cargill working with us on this project, because this is the type of thing that we started this to do, to help solve some of the biggest problems in the agriculture industry. And so as a consequence, when there are additional requirements around security, we recognize that this is part of accomplishing our organizational objectives. Right, so it's sometimes the security requirements can be very complicated in the short term, but we recognize that it's absolutely part of solving some of these really big problems, because it's part of having globally scaling solutions to work with people like Cargill, you know, and we appreciate that.
Maybe one more question.
So my question is for Minette. You explained it very well about the funds and third fund you're starting. Could you give us a little more view on what's the philosophy behind the fund when you think about the overall impact or outcome when you plan for it? Also, I come from a financial services background, so just want to get a sense on there is exorbitant money flowing into these funds. So how do you see some of the patterns evolving where the money is flowing, and if there are any specific areas which you see more traction than others?
I think when you talk about sourcing, I guess you're saying the investment side of it. So Southeast Asia in particular, I think has gone through a number of changes, and it's important to recognize that the startup scene in Southeast Asia hasn't been around for as long as it has been in China or the United States or in Israel. So we're still kind of norming and forming. I think the early funds had come from both public sector. Singapore has had an excellent program with the NRF for quite a while, and quite a lot of pure financial investors, many of them coming from the United States. So people in the startup scene would know 500 Startups, or the Golden Gate guys have been around. And then we went through this period maybe from 5 years ago with the corporates. So Singtel Innovate, and we are part of the Singtel group. Singtel Innovate announced a $250 million fund, and over time we have seen the banks have come around with their own funds. SPH has a fund as well, and you've seen that replicated mostly in Singapore and Indonesia, and then the rest of the countries, I guess, in Southeast Asia are kind of following suit. I think one of the interesting developments more recently is that overseas funds are of late coming into the region with bigger funds, whether it's $200 or $500 million. KKR has announced a fund for the region. So you can see that quite a lot more coming in. Some of that because I think there are vibrant consumer markets in Southeast Asia. When you think about the growth rates, then there is room for both consumer growth and therefore enterprise growth. And then so the startups and the funds are both coming in. Sorry, your first question.
Your philosophy of the funds that you are launching.
The philosophy of the funds. So, I think if we were to be honest, the first fund that we launched back in 2012 was an experiment. Coming from corporate, you're given a few $1 million and they'll see what you can make of it. I certainly had no illusions that that was going to be a forever thing. It was either we made it work, and I had pitched this to our CEO, so either I was going to make it work and we were going to have this fantastic thing, or I was out of a job. 3 years later, we got $50 million more, so I guess it was useful for them. And at this point, we're just looking to offer more digital products, digital lifestyle, digital business solutions for the Philippines. Whether they were coming from Philippine startups or overseas startups wasn't an issue. It was really around, could we bring value to our parent company by finding innovation outside and bringing it either into the Philippines, if that was appropriate, or just learning from and understanding it, and frankly exposing our senior leadership to a different way of thinking. People who are not less risk averse, who are faster on their feet, who don't take 6 months to produce a business case. Because in those 6 months, you can be testing the market. So just very different risk profiles, very different innovation profiles. This year we were awarded the assignment of $200 million. And at this point, this is for the entire conglomerate. So we're going through a process of changing. Because it's a significantly larger amount, the underlying philosophy is less experimental in that sense, and it is more future-looking.
So Ayala is 185 years old. It is 2.5% of Philippine GDP. It's probably 12-15% of the Philippine Stock Exchange. So the understanding is that we have an ability to influence the market in a significant way. And so the underlying philosophy is not about we're going to be in fintech or we're going to be in health tech or we're going to be in agri-tech. The underlying philosophy is what futures do we want to build? Do we want to build, are we trying to build Industry 4.0? Do we believe in factories going dark? And so we have had a number of conversations saying we want to build 4 kinds of future. A frictionless future, so looking at how much more convenience we can bring in, how much more intuitiveness, how much better a user experience can there be for various industries. There is smart living, looking at smart cities, smart homes, etc. Prop tech, construction tech. We have from automation to augmentation. So looking at how machine learning and artificial intelligence, etc., can build the future of work in a way that does not destroy jobs, that improves the value of human capital. My personal favorite is the 4th one, which is a world of plenty. And the thesis underlying that is that when you look at the world, and particularly the part of the world we all live in, there's still such a lot of scarcity. And whether that is for energy or water or food. And if you can imagine that scarcity is not a supply problem, but a distribution problem, and the technology ought to have the ability to address distribution issues in a much more efficient way. So those are the things, those are the 4 themes that we want to invest in. So the short answer is that we're not investing in a particular space. We're not tech focused as much as we are future focused. But those are kind of the practice philosophies underlying the answer.
Thank you, Lynette. Let's maybe on that point, let's just come back to talking about challenges in corporate and startup partnerships. We talked about bringing outside innovation into these organizations, exposing your executives to startup innovation, tech innovation, and I think earlier on you talked about the challenges of creating a common understanding of both sides. How did you overcome some of these challenges?
Quite a lot of it is relationships, as you said. It's important to keep involving, engaging both sides. Both sides need to learn, both sides need to adjust. But also I think there is something about telling the story in a way that people are able to understand, helping bring them together. So in addition to the formal deal structure, so for example, we do what we call deal day, where we take one company, which could have been, we've done it with McDonald's, with AXA, where we go through a discovery process to understand what their pain points are, and then we offer them 5 to 7 companies who will pitch for business, very specifically for them. And in that way, they understand that there are solutions out there. And maybe they'll sign a deal with all 7, maybe they'll sign a deal with no one. But they begin to get an understanding of how things can change. And I think what has worked well for us is that brings both the C levels and the word levels. Because we understand culturally, when you come in through the C level, there's such a lot of resistance at the working level to make it happen. Because they're going to say, can't work, this is a problem, that's a problem. If you come in through the work level, it's very difficult to bring it up to the C levels because there's such a lot at stake. As he said, nobody will disagree with an Accenture or an IBM. There's not very much at stake there. But to take a startup solution puts significant risk on the proposer at work level. So by bringing both the C levels and the work levels into the same forum, we find that that's helpful.
Thank you. And Kim, what's your experience like? How did you overcome some of these challenges internally?
I think one of the things that Yara could do better is to really Well, we try to ring-fence startups or digital innovations outside the core business by setting up a BU. I think one way we could have done better is actually digitalize our own operations. So if we have digital tools for our sales team, our agronomists, our marketing team, if they use it on a daily basis, they will learn to appreciate what the technology and digitalization will bring to their business, to their work, to their daily life. In fact, everybody has been experiencing every day you take out your phone, you do some sort of social media exchange and everything. We don't realize that it's actually part and parcel of our life already. So if you bring it into part of the work, then I think it will help to bridge the gap between ourselves and the startup. Then I think this is something that I can see that it should be something that we should be heading in that direction, so we can actually bridge the gap from there.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, but I'd like to give you guys an opportunity for any last words, starting with Tommy perhaps.
So, talking about challenges and overcoming them, I would just like to add some pessimism to the discussion and talk about one of the challenges that we face with the companies that we work with. So it's one thing is doing all these accelerators and pitching sessions, and then you move on to pilot, then you deliver the pilot, and then the time comes to scale up to the product. I mean that's the whole premise, right? And one of the challenges that we face in scaling up is related to I don't have a word for it. It's more related to change management. Like how do you bring about the change and educate the users of the product and of also the information, how to use it. For example, when we work with companies, a lot of teams are our stakeholders. All the way from the C-level people to the quality teams, the procurement teams, and the retail store staff. Everybody has to work, right? Somebody has to generate data, somebody has to use the data. And it becomes very difficult for us to make sure that everybody is aligned for the benefit of the company and also for benefit of the kind of impact that we want to bring about.
I think it's incumbent upon startups to understand the different dynamics that come from dealing with multinationals. And almost all of the different points here are kind of have an upside and downside, right? So multinationals have some high requirements on some things like security and things like this, but there's the positive side to that is it gets your business in shape to scale globally, right? Multinationals represent perhaps a market which for a lot of startups, one contract can be bigger, a few times bigger than all of their existing business put together, right? But when a startup is at that stage, if they do not understand their costs well and how they're going to grow, and they misprice that contract, that can put them out of business, right? And so again, that one, you have kind of a double-edged sword. It's important to understand what the expectations are on both sides. So multinationals also represent a tremendous store of expertise, right? So the people you work with, who are working on solving some problem, know more than maybe anyone else in the world about solving that problem, But at the same time, there can be a dynamic to try to keep this have some clauses in the contract that keep this from other people, we've seen that with some of our customers, not Cargill, right? We'll point that out, right? But some. And so in many of these circumstances, there can be two sides to it, and I think startups is the side I know should be aware,
Thank you.
Maybe to start for everybody to understand that the other side is not an adversary, but they are alien. And therefore it is important for both to achieve an understanding by spelling out things that perhaps are obvious to you, but are not super obvious to the other side. So to not make the assumptions. When you're talking to somebody who's not familiar with your language or your culture, and you kind of spell things out a little bit, we find that has been helpful for bridging the gap between startups and corporates, having a sense of we are on the same side for this. I think also it's important to keep remembering, especially when it's tough, that it can happen, it can be achieved. There is such a lot that is possible. And particularly for multinationals, when you think about the things that you learn for startups, the first thing you try to tackle should be the most difficult thing, the most critical assumption, the assumption on which things might fail. Because if you're going to try something new, you should go to the most critical assumption and test that one first, because there's no point spending 6 or 8 or 12 months making a lot of progress because you're testing the easy wins, and then you get to the one thing that everything hangs on, and then you find out 12 months later and 12 months worth of cost later that actually this was going to fail after all. And what can be more challenging than working with a multinational? And I don't mean that facetiously, so even if you are starting in a market, for example, where it isn't your level of data privacy, you ought to be architecting for Europe level of data privacy. You should be architecting for global standards, because the only way to work with a multinational is to be able to offer something, even for the kind of the least developed markets, something that they know if it should work here, it can scale to their more developed markets without massive reworking of the solution that they were in love with to begin with.
Thank you. I'd like to end with sharing Yara's vision. A world without hunger, a planet respected, and a collaborative society. So, world without hunger, and I totally agree, is not that there's not enough supply. It's often related to a supply chain issue or food grown in the wrong places. Planet respected is to be able to grow food in a sustainable manner. Be it water scarcity, actually we are taking land for granted. One day we're going to run out of land where we can grow food in a sustainable way. Last but not least, a collaborative society. And this is what we aspire to work with a lot of stakeholders, startups out there. That Yara alone cannot solve all the problems. That we need to work with innovative startups. We need to work with other stakeholders, other crop protection companies, with NGOs to realize this vision. So definitely there's room for us treating each other like aliens, to know each other better, and I think we are taking the right step at the same time. And I fully believe that, as Paul said, that this will be accelerated much quicker than we expected. And we look forward to more collaboration with different types of stakeholders out there. Thank you.
Thank you, and please join me in thanking the panelists, Henry, Spencer, Thank you very much for your time and sharing these insights and the stories. Thank you. And so now we need a little bit of input from you guys, and to do that, let me hand the microphone to my colleague JQ, who will brief you on this very small exercise we're going to do to collect some of your thoughts.
Hi, so some of you guys have been here for quite a number of times. So as you know, at the end of the shared learning series, we will try to do some small exercises to gather the thoughts and insights from the audience. And at the end of it, all these thoughts will be uploaded onto the website for sharing. So for today, we will focus on the survey that was sent out to the startups. So as mentioned earlier by Paul, these are the 3 top issues raised by startups about the challenges they face when working with corporates. First is on negotiating commercial terms. Second is about the restrictive policies. And third is a lengthy process of proposal development as well as submission requirements. So we are breaking into 4 groups here. If you look at your welcome sheet, it will be numbered 1 to 4. So it will be split into group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4 over there.